Well, hello people, and welcome back to some more City Skylines 2 coverage. I hope you're having a wonderful day. It's time to get quite excited because this week it's all about public and cargo transport, which is probably the dev diary that I am most interested in. We love our trams, love our metro and trains, and there's some really cool things that are shown off in this trailer. So let's move through the dev diary together, and then of course we'll have a look at the blog afterwards as well.
Transport networks set the rhythm of life in your city. As they move people and cargo, they can create harmony and discord. This finely tuned orchestra of ships, vehicles, planes, and trains is yours to conduct. To create a thriving metropolis, maintain a
Little shot here as the camera zooms out over New Darlington. Not particularly related to public transport, but just have a look at some of the towers here, especially this one here over on the right is super modern looking, isn't it? Also some really cool towers up in the middle. Seems to be a much greater variation in, I guess, what this will be high density in cities too, isn't there? I'm really liking the look of a lot of the buildings here.
steady beat to keep your city in motion. You build a city from scratch in City Skylines 2. No public transport, no tracks, no runways.
So it's interesting here just how they've obviously made the video to kind of relapse as it moves through its building stages. And some of the buildings here on the right really look like almost army barracks, don't they? Some of those very early commercials. Not related, of course, it's obviously not an army barracks, but interesting to see how some of that low density would appear.
Creating these and other transportation networks is a crucial first step. After that, improving and integrating them paves the way for expansion. When you establish your city, citizens can take the bus or a taxi to get where they're going. These are the first transport options you'll unlock.
So at this point here, they place a bus depot which looks much bigger, doesn't it, than the bus depots we saw in Cities 1. And we'll also see them place the train depots a little later on in the video too, which look so much better. But some interesting information here on the left, a breakdown of how many thousand citizens per month are using the line, which is cool. Also broken down to tourists, which is very similar to Cities 1. But then we can also see that there is cargo separated out now from public transport, and each of those cargo options of trucks, trains, boats, and planes all have their own tonnage per month and number of routes, so it's now looking like we can actually place our own cargo routes down, which is a vast improvement from what it was in Cities Skylines 1.
They're reliable, cheap, and easy to route.
Taxi depot goes down here as well, which is a much more impressive building, isn't it? And also taxis confirmed in the base game for Cities 2, which is very nice.
Here, there, and everywhere. Traffic conditions are their Achilles heel. It's no big deal in a new metropolis, but it is for a growing city. That's when you'll level up your public transport. Think trains, trams, and subways. Each one has pros and cons.
Some really nice shots of all the vehicles as well here, isn't it? Including these double-decker trains. Super cool. I'm much happy with all the vehicle models that we're seeing.
They're all expensive to build and complicated, requiring depots, tracks, and stops where passengers can buy tickets and get on and off. That means they can't offer the far-reaching service of a bus line. So, just a little observation here. I can't quite make my mind up what I think of this road wear mechanic that seems to be going on. It almost seems to be the wrong way around. Surely the road should get darker the more worn it becomes, because the cars would be leaving rubber on the road. 1 minute I like it, the next minute I don't. I'm not entirely sure what I'm thinking of this kind of road wear mechanic. Or the door-to-door service of a taxi. On the other hand, they're more efficient, not least because they carry.
So this shot here, we're seeing some pretty interesting overlays. There's a couple of icons here, isn't there? We can see just what looks like a regular bus icon or public transport icon. And then there's also an icon with 3 little people on it. Don't know what that means quite yet. I'm maybe assuming it means that that vehicle is full, whereas the other ones still have space available. That would be quite cool if that's what that's referring to, but again, we're not sure.
More people and cargo, and reduce road congestion.
We can also see here on the tram line that there are selectable models from the base game, which is nice. Hopefully that means we've got a couple of different tram models to play with. Get a breakdown of the line length, number of stops on it, number of passengers that are currently using it, and a percentage of line usage as well. Also a ticket price slider, which we know from the last dev diary of the traffic AI that the price of public transport really affects and influences how your Sims choose to get around the city now, which is very interesting. And we can also, of course, increase the number of vehicles on it, change the day and night schedule if you want to, and also the color of the line. One thing I like here is just how much cleaner the interface looks, right? It's so much smoother and modern than it was in Cities 1.
Let's start with subways.
And then we get a shot here which confirms doggos in Cities 2, which is possibly the best news we've had. I'm looking forward to that dog dev diary if we ever get one. But we do get a shot of the underground metro station, a little bit larger than the one in Cities 1 it looks like, but just nice. It's got a little sort of cover on it, stairs going down, a few bushes around it, a little bit of fencing too, a couple of bike racks in the corner there as well. Very nice.
They're fast.
So they open up the subway station here, shows us that upkeep, which is 10,000 a month for a subway station. It's crazy, isn't it, how much the economy and the population numbers have scaled up from Cities 1. We also get an efficiency, which is 118%, which is very good. A number of employees at the station, which we haven't seen before. Its comfort rating, which we know that seniors are going to prefer comfort to get around because it's easier for them. And also a number of passengers waiting at that station as well, which is nice. That's some really nice sort of information breakdown for stations. Much easier to take that information in, isn't it, than it is in Cities 1.
High capacity, and they take up very little room when they're underground.
And then we do get confirmation here
If they operate
overground metro available
above
in
ground.
the base game. See here they select the overground subway station, which is actually the same upkeep of 10,000 per month as the underground station, which I guess makes sense because all the infrastructure is still there, it's just underground, but maybe that would be, I guess, more expensive to build, but the same to upkeep. Not entirely sure, probably reading too much into that. But overground metro is a very nice confirmation.
You can run them on elevated tracks so they don't get tangled up with road traffic.
And we can see some of the metro moving across here as well. Looks pretty similar to the elevated metro in Cities 1, doesn't it? Those yellow track lines. But a nice bridge and nice little metro cars as well.
Trams. They're more flexible than trains, so you can more easily add lines to service new and expanded neighborhoods.
So they cover that, trams are more flexible than trains. It's pretty obvious stuff. You obviously can't run a train line down a street, but you can with tram lines, and get in some similar information, length of the line, number of stops, passengers on the line, usage, etc. Yeah, looks pretty nice. Nothing too much to say about the trams really compared to all the other methods of public transport.
Build tram tracks on existing roads, or run them on dedicated tracks if that's the best way to keep the hustle and bustle dialed up. Trains carry loads of people too, and
so all this train stuff here is really cool. I'm actually quite excited to use the trains in Cities 2. I've always been part of the tram gang, but trains are beginning to tickle the pickle here in the build-up to Cities 2.
Not just suburbanites. They can bring visitors from outside your city in large numbers.
Great shot here, this double-decker train moving along the line too, and also splits into a single track here as well on the left, doesn't it? I hope that's not one way, because I'd love to have some sort of two-way single track stuff for setting up train networks. That'd be really cool. And hopefully we can have some kind of single track AI functionality so that does actually work.
Trains play another critical role as
so this is really
cargo
cool here.
transport.
Look when they place this building. Look how big this rail yard is. Super cool. It's got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 connections on it there each side. Super impressive looking building. I'm much happier to see this bigger, chunkier looking infrastructure for Cities Skylines 2. It's something that really bothered me in Cities 1, that these buildings don't really hammer home what they are, because if you go to a rail depot, a rail yard, they're enormous, and Cities 1 didn't really reflect that. And also confirmed that we have to place down rail yards for our trains and cargo trains to spawn. They don't just pop out of thin air anymore like they did in CS1.
Build a cargo train terminal?
And look at the size of this cargo train terminal here. It's so big.
And you
Absolutely love that. It's got all these little boxes and crates all around it, shipping containers, etc. Which does confirm that the stuff we saw in the last dev diary probably isn't prop detailing. It looks like all these little props and assets are part of the buildings, which is certainly better to have sort of pre-detailed buildings, but I am desperately hoping we have access to those props to expand upon that.
build a hub where businesses can receive.
Love this here as well. We can see shipping containers, all these sort of yellow warning marking lines, little slow down decals here as you come over to the rail crossing. Really cool. Some empty train cars there as well. Although they don't actually look as though they're on a train line, but at least they're there.
Ship and store incoming and outgoing goods.
Look how good this freight train looks too. Incredible. So good. And although this building here on the left is tipping off a little bit, it's a little bit the leaning warehouse of New Dollarton, I guess, right?
Water transportation is another option for passenger travel and moving cargo. It's another high-capacity network, though water transport's real potential lies in imports and exports. You see, cargo ships might be slower than trains, but these bad boys can carry 1,000 tons of stuff to and from your city.
So they confirm here that cargo ships are now much more relevant to actual cargo ship size. They hold the most amount of goods, but as a trade-off for that, they're obviously much slower moving. And with a much slower simulation in Cities Skylines 2, I'm guessing that's really going to have to factor into your decision as to what the best way of import and export is for the city.
Yeah, that's right. You can trade with other cities.
And then confirmed here as well that we can trade with other cities, including resources and goods. We also saw in the first dev diary, didn't we? We can export sewage to them and import electricity and whatnot as well. So it seems that other city mechanic seems to be getting a little bit deeper the more we learn about cities too.
So you'll need somewhere to house all the goods and resources coming and going. Easy. Like cargo train terminals, cargo harbors double as cargo storage facilities.
So that is so cool. Our cargo yards are actually functional shipping containers. Like, they store goods. They're actually kind of functioning as what would be a warehouse in Cities Skylines 1. Over the moon with that news. Functional cargo yards. Oh, goodness gracious. That's so good. That's like one of the best bits of the dev diary, that these huge shipping container yards are actually holding goods for the city. Fantastic. Amazing news.
Like all of the other networks, air transportation has drawbacks.
So we get some nice shots of the airport here, which we haven't really seen in these dev diaries yet. I do like the look of the airport. It kind of looks a little squashed down from what we've been used to in airports and cities too. Runway looks a little bit short, and unfortunately we don't actually get any footage of this being built, which is leading me to believe that it's a single plopped asset, which means, well, doesn't mean it's not confirmed, but I'm assuming we're moving away from that functionality that we had in the airports DLC of being able to configure your own taxi and runway systems. That's a real shame if that's the case, because I much preferred that to just ploppable airports, but maybe we'll get confirmation on that in a later dev diary.
Planes carry fewer passengers and less cargo than ships and trains. Airports are also astronomically expensive and have the footprint of a...
So some more cool airport shots here as well. Some really nice car parking. Again, we're seeing the angled parking come into it, although that does look like it's part of the asset. And a helicopter pad here in the foreground as well, which perhaps indicates the presence of helicopter travel in the game. We haven't seen it as a drawable public transport line, but maybe they have some kind of functionality, or they could just be aesthetic as well.
Small town. However, air transport has a pretty irresistible advantage: speed. Plus, planes won't add to road congestion.
Really great shot of the plane landing there too, isn't it? So much, looks a lot more realistic than in Cities 1, of course. The air traffic in Cities 1 is notorious for being just insane, so much more realistic it would seem here.
They don't follow a rigid track.
So we see here that this passenger airplane, public transport, so this looks like it's been drawn in because we can see the line here. So its origin is Leaston and its destination is Leaston, so I'm guessing it's just doing a big loop, is it? Only holding 33 passengers, but really cool that we can now seem to draw internal public transport lines for air travel, which is fantastic.
And they make outside connections incredibly easy. The transport mix in your city will become complex and...
So here again, we're seeing some more really interesting icons popping up and around. The blue ones are obviously referring to buses, little pink tram icons as well. We can see that our depots are marked out by these little sort of house icons, I guess. And again, we can see those people markers, which I'm going to assume means a full vehicle, like we mentioned earlier. Not entirely sure. Let me know what you think those little people icon means. So here they pull up the public transport overview, and look how clean this looks. Really nice. You can turn off each of the lines here as well, and there's also a separate tab for cargo lines too.
Overview to review passenger and cargo transportation networks separately.
So see here that cargo railway route number 1 has a 30-kilometer length, 3 stops and 3 trains currently shifting 50 tons of cargo. I'm massively impressed with the fact that we seem to have internal cargo lines now. That was a real big problem in Cities 1 because you couldn't direct where it went. So it seems we can now much more control over exactly how and where cargo transport moves around our cities. Really quite happy to see that, a lot happier than I thought I would be.
Filter again by transport type to see high-level details about individual lines and toggle them on or off. Use the Transportation Info view to understand the impact of your networks. Plan and manage transportation networks carefully to find the right tempo for the movement of people and cargo. Conduct it perfectly, and every citizen, trader, and tourist will march your city toward greatness.
And final shot here of this building now looks to finally be confirmed to be a hospital, which is really cool, sort of a super hospital, right? Maybe the final level of the modular one. But really nice shot, fun dev diary, and that does round it out. Let's move on to the blog now and see if there's anything to unpick there as well. Okay guys, so we've moved through the dev diary. Let's now have a look at the blog and see if there's anything serious to unpick here. So here it is confirmed that we can set up our own internal cargo lines to help supplement industry and commercial companies using trains, ships and airplanes, which is absolutely fantastic. So of course it doesn't look like we can set up lines with trucks. It says in conjunction with trucks. So it looks like we can configure our own train, ship and airplane cargo lines, which is very, very exciting. So just like in Cities 1, buses will be the first form of public transport that we're playing with. And we also get 2 flavours of bus, which is nice. We get the classic fuel-operated bus and then an environmentally friendly electric bus. There is a dev diary much later down the line for seasons and climate, so I'm guessing pollution is going to play a much heavier part in Cities 2, especially since it seems to be specifically acknowledging environmentally friendly, which is basically the biofuel buses we had in Cities Skylines 1, right? And to actually use the electric buses, you will need to update the bus depot to actually get them. So it's not 2 separate depots now. You just need to upgrade it to get access to the cleaner version, which is nice. And also confirmed as well that we are now able to create intercity bus lines within the base game, which is really nice to see that functionality transfer from Sunset Harbour. I really like intercity buses, so I'm glad that they're included. And again, we get a nice shot of the taxi depot here, which is a really cool building. I'm not massively excited about taxis. I never really... It's kind of hard to tell their impact, isn't it? Especially if you compare them to Cities 1. You never really see them, and the other methods of public transport just absorb so many more sims. Taxis are just kind of swamped a little bit. But they're there, I can't complain. It's nice to see them included from After Dark, but I'm not overly into my taxis, so nothing too exciting for me there. But this is pretty cool here. So taxis will require the depot for maintenance, but before upgrading the taxi depot, taxis can only pick up passengers from a taxi stand. But then you can get the dispatch centre upgrade. Then there are no limits for picking up fares in the city, which is cool. And we also get electric taxis, which reduce noise and air pollution, which is very nice as well. Again, really hammering into that sort of climate change vibe and mechanic here, isn't it, with reducing pollutions via different methods of public transport. So interesting here where we come on to trains, it says to create train lines, we need to build a rail yard, which we talked about in the video, which sends out and maintains your trains. So the fact that it's specifically highlighting maintenance for a train, does that mean we're also going to see train derailment, as though we're going to see also car crashes? Interested to see if we will see trains derail. The fact that it's specifically pointing out we have to maintain them indicates it will, but that hasn't been mentioned or shown off, so maybe not. Beautiful shot of the rail yard. So happy with these new thick buildings. Like, she thick, right? Really thick. Love this one. Just such a nice looking asset. I can't wait to start playing with orientations and angles of this, and you know, more industry buildings around it to complement it. Hopefully some prop detailing available as well. So train infrastructure allows us to create 2-way and double tracks, as well as 1-way tracks, elevated tracks, bridges, tunnels, and cut and fill tracks running lower than the ground level. That's really cool, so we can now recess train lines into the ground automatically, which is much nicer. I'm really happy with that. Very similar to that. I guess it's the same sort of functionality. Is it the cut and fill for the road tool that we saw in the last one? Also seems to be extending up into trains as well, which is very nice. So trains and other rail transports are able to drive backwards and forwards, which is really cool. So that's also going to extend to our trams as well. And thus they can utilize track switches created by combining two-way and double train tracks. Stations also feature pre-built tracks which create track switches automatically when tracks are connected to them, regardless of the track type, which is cool. And this is great. Train stations can be upgraded with additional platforms, so modular train stations basically confirmed. So that's really nice, you know, you don't just have to keep placing different train stations. As the town grows, its station grows with it. Huge fan of that, really happy to see it. And we can also see what looks to be some taxi stands on the front there as well, with some people waiting. So now we come on to trams, which of course is my ultimate favourite method of public transport. I absolutely love the trams in Cities 1. Only reason to buy the Snowfall DLC, to be fair. And we do get confirmation that tram lines can be built separately, so just like in Cities 1, we can take our trams onto their own networks, totally avoiding traffic altogether, which is very nice. So again, the initial cost of a tram network is, you know, more expensive than a bus, which you would expect, but the upside is that they're quieter and they don't pollute the air. So now we come on to subway, and again we're referencing those pathfinding calculations from the previous AI traffic video that we had last week. So it would appear that it's a popular transport choice for many citizens who value their time when making those pathfinding choices. And I think it was adults, wasn't it, who most valued time when making their pathfinding decisions. And a really nice shot here of that inner city metro stop again. Looks a little bit bigger, but still nice and snug on that corner. A much better looking base game metro station than the city's Skylines one. So similar to trains, the subway also requires a subway yard to supply trains for the lines, which is great. Subways use exclusive tracks and passengers can access the trains from underground and overground stations, which is very nice. Happy to see overground metro included from the start this time. Unlike the other types of rail, you can build double subway tracks and one-way tracks with options for elevated and cut and fill, as well as bridges and tunnels, which is very nice. So a really nice shot here with the passenger harbour, isn't it? Much more impressive than the city's Skylines 1 version had. And also looks to be kind of an inbuilt bus terminal here as well, doesn't it? Looks a little bit kind of like a bus stand. Also over here too in the corner. So hopefully we're going to have essentially transport hubs in the game rather than just single stops. And then we also get some information. Ships can transport a high number of passengers, both inside the city and to and from outside connections. Intercity water transport requires access to map edges by seaways and connecting harbours to these seaways, so pretty similar to how they work in Cities Skylines 1. So it comes on to talk about airports here. There's not a vast amount of information here that we don't already know, although it does specify that international airport is the size of a small town. So the fact that they specified a specific international airport, does that mean we'll also get to play with a regional airport too? I hope so. And this is very cool. This would not work in Orchid Bay. So when placing an airport, you can see the projected landing and takeoff zones at the ends of the building, giving you an approximation of where limitations to zone building heights are applied. So now you can no longer just place these airports where you want. There are now building and height limitations to factor in your airport, which is much more realistic. Really happy to see that. Hopefully the air travel is a little more, well, realistic, I guess, than it is in the first game. And there we have airports limit the height of buildings in the landing and takeoff zones to avoid collisions. Which is cool that it's trying to avoid collisions. Does that mean that collisions are possible? So now we come on to cargo trains, and once a train terminal is built, companies can use it as storage for incoming and outgoing cargo. So same with the shipping container harbour as well. Also our cargo train terminals are going to function as goods storage, which is really cool. Even with no cargo lines, companies ordering resources can use the station's storage facilities to drop off and pick up resources and goods, with the facility working like a distribution centre, which is very cool. Really happy to see that. And look at this cargo train terminal here. How cool is that? See this train waiting on the line here. Looks like it's maybe waiting to be loaded. I'm interested if we'll see any sort of loading animation, because we do have some much more realistic container cranes here. I really hope we do. Maybe the traffic or the cargo will just spawn on the train, but with a much slower simulation, maybe it will take time for that cargo to load on, and hopefully we'll see that animated. That would be fantastic. And of course, to state the obvious, due to the large amounts of resources that are handled via trains, it can generate a lot of truck traffic. So, you know, our cargo train terminals are going to be truck magnets, just like they are in Cities 1 as well. Cargo ships will carry 1,000 tons of cargo, which seems like a lot. They are slower than trains, but not held back by traffic on the roads, of course. Cargo harbours also store goods as well, which was confirmed in the trailer. Really great shot as well here of that cargo harbour, isn't it? Super, super cool. Loving all these large industrial buildings here. We can get some really cool details, a lot of big factory units here as well. This doesn't look like a zoning, does it? Maybe this is an industry signature building. Some real tall smokestack refinery looking numbers over there as well. Much more realistic looking industry. And we can also see what looks like a fully loaded cargo ship here in this shot as well, because the ones in the trailer didn't have those containers stacked up. And we can also upgrade the cargo harbour with a railway connection as well, so it looks like we're getting the cargo hub from After Dark now as an upgradable option for the base game cargo harbour. Very cool. So we will unlock air transport once we use the modular upgrade on our airport to add a cargo terminal to it, so it would appear it's no longer a separate building now. A nice little shot of the cargo planes here as well, more containers, and there looks to be a little bit of airport detail in there too. Some little trucks lined up on the asphalt ready to move. I like that. So in Cities 1, only buses, taxis and trams had depots, while trains and subways spawned directly from the stations. In Cities 2, each land-based public transport type has a depot or yard where the vehicles are spawned and where their maintenance takes place. And each depot can support a predetermined number of vehicles, and this can be extended with the suitable building upgrades. The line tool functionality has been standardized to provide a more simple gameplay loop between all different transport options, including passenger and cargo. So the gameplay basic now goes: you place a depot, your stops and stations, tracks and roads, and then your lines. So for creating lines of public transport vehicles, you put the depot down, then stations, and then tracks like we just saw. Buses traditionally use pre-existing road networks, which is fine. And we get a little screenshot here of what looks like adding a new tram stop onto this particular line. And something interesting, it seems to also be listing the address here as well for 53 Underhill Street, which is pretty cool. I'm guessing that's really going to tie into our Sims lives, of course, because everyone seems to have a much more important and longer lifespan now, so I'm guessing their address and locations are going to factor into it. So, interesting, we can see the address on public transport stops as well. So this is very cool here. So this is the confirmation of waypoints, which are separate from stops. So if you don't want a bus to go down a certain route or a certain road without having to place a stop on it, which is what you had to do in Cities 1 if you wanted it to go a certain way, you can now add a waypoint onto the line so it avoids perhaps a certain junction or a certain road. That is incredible. I'm really happy to see that confirmed. We can see an example of this here in this screenshot. So waypoints can be placed while creating a line or afterward to reroute the public transport. So great example of this here. $2 obviously doesn't want this blue bus line coming straight down this big arterial system. So instead he places a waypoint that takes it off the main road and then back onto it once it passes that main junction. That is incredible. I'm really happy to see that functionality, and that is such a ball ache in Cities 1. If you want a public transport line to go somewhere very specific like a bus, very happy to see waypoints now part of Cities 2. So similar to train stations, harbours need to be connected to a seaway, of course, create ship lines travelling between the city and outside connections, and airports are directly connected to the outside connections with the airplane line tool, which is really cool. Of course, the real pain in the arse in Cities 1 with airports is that they'll just come in from any approach and zoom in on some very ridiculous approaches sometimes. But now, with this pretty crazy graphic here, it looks like we can determine how and where the planes are actually coming into the runway, which is really cool. So this right here is incredibly interesting. So in Cities Skylines, each transportation option was unlocked by reaching different population milestones. This resulted in everyone's cities kind of following that same progression path, obviously, because we all unlocked buses, and then metro, and then airports and trams, etc. Not anymore, it would seem. Cities Skylines 2, with the exception of buses and taxis, which unlock with the first milestone, each transportation type is unlocked using the new development points in the development tree for transportation. There is a dev diary specifically for gameplay and progression. I think it's one of the last ones that's being covered. But the fact that we can now put development points into a development tree so we can decide exactly which methods of public transport each of us wants to specialize our cities into is amazing. So good. That's incredible. It's like a tech tree. So if you want to be a very train focused city and not really bother with boats or planes or metro or whatever, you just stick all your development points into that train development tree. Fantastic. I'm really, really excited to see that. That's going to make everyone's city look so much more different, I think. So you can select which types of transportation your city needs. Wonderful. Wonderful news that it's not a set milestone progression. Each of us can now choose how we develop our public transport in the city. Amazing. That's the best bit of this dev diary that's been confirmed. And then there's nothing too interesting here. This is just the cargo transport info view. Breaks down all the information that we need, how much tonnage is being shipped, how long the line is, etc. Just happy that it's much nicer UI now. So turns out we can also customize what is shown on the info view to easily find a specific transport option. Really cool, I like that. It seems to be much more customizable here, doesn't it? And this is things that we talked about in the video. Line panel features things such as length, number of stops, current passengers, etc. Just happy that it's so much cleaner now. It just looks a lot nicer, doesn't it? And it looks like here we actually have sort of confirmation of those reversible trams, right? This is clearly the end of the tram line. And then it's backing down out of the road it came down to then head back onto the other side and then resume its double lining. So reversible trams, amazing. You actually require a mod in Cities Skylines 1 to do that, and it can still be a little bit sketchy even then. So that's really great for the tram gang. And that is all they have for us today. So very, very exciting. I'm over the moon with the inclusion of waypoints, reversible trams, the fact that not every one of us is going to unlock the same type of public transport at the same time is really going to make all of our cities so much more different, isn't it? Because we're not going to be like, okay, well, we've hit milestone 2, let's put the train station down. You know, I could put the train station down and John across the road could put down the metro station, and then the design of the city and the infrastructure totally changes based on that one simple decision. The inclusion of functional shipping yards and cargo containers storing goods is amazing. Everything's looking really nice. I love the double-decker trains. Trams looking really good. It looks like we can select multiple models of those as well. Over the moon, everyone. Definitely some really cool information in this one. Again, let's keep that conversation going down below. What are you enjoying? Anything here that's made you insanely excited for this? Anything, again, that's really wound you up and something you're not looking forward to? Please, let's keep that conversation going down below. I'll reply to as many comments as we can. Let me know what you think of it. Otherwise, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day.
Transport networks set the rhythm of life in your city. As they move people and cargo, they can create harmony and discord. This finely tuned orchestra of ships, vehicles, planes, and trains is yours to conduct. To create a thriving metropolis, maintain a steady beat to keep your city in motion. You build a city from scratch in City Skylines 2. No public transport, no tracks, no runways. Creating these and other transportation networks is a crucial first step. After that, improving and integrating them paves the way for expansion. When you establish your city, citizens can take the bus or a taxi to get where they're going. These are the first transport options you'll unlock. They're reliable, cheap, and easy to route here, there, and everywhere. Traffic conditions are their Achilles heel. It's no big deal in a new metropolis, but it is for a growing city. That's when you'll level up your public transport. Think trains, trams, and subways. Each one has pros and cons. They're all expensive to build and complicated, requiring depots, tracks, and stops where passengers can buy tickets and get on and off. That means they can't offer the far-reaching service of a bus line or the door-to-door service of a taxi. On the other hand, they're more efficient, not least because they carry more people and cargo and reduce road congestion. Let's start with subways. They're fast, high capacity, and they take up very little room when they're underground. If they operate above ground, you can run them on elevated tracks so they don't get tangled up with road traffic. Trams. They're more flexible than trains, so you can more easily add lines to service new and expanded neighborhoods. Build tram tracks on existing roads, or run them on dedicated tracks if that's the best way to keep the hustle and bustle dialed up. Trains carry loads of people too, and not just suburbanites. They can bring visitors from outside your city in large numbers. Trains play another critical role as cargo transport. Build a cargo train terminal, and you build a hub where businesses can receive, ship, and store incoming and outgoing goods. Water transportation is another option for passenger travel and moving cargo. It's another high-capacity network, though water transport's real potential lies in imports and exports. You see, cargo ships might be slower than trains, but these bad boys can carry 1,000 tons of stuff to and from your city. Yeah, that's right. You can trade with other cities. So you'll need somewhere to house all the goods and resources coming and going. Easy. Like cargo train terminals, cargo harbors double as cargo storage facilities. Like all of the other networks, air transportation has drawbacks. Planes carry fewer passengers and less cargo than ships and trains. Airports are also astronomically expensive and have the footprint of a small town. However, air transport has a pretty irresistible advantage: speed. Plus, planes won't add to road congestion, they don't follow a rigid track, and they make outside connections incredibly easy. The transport mix in your city will become complex and intricate. Use the transportation overview to review passenger and cargo transportation networks separately. Filter again by transport type to see high-level details about individual lines and toggle them on or off. Use the transportation info view to understand the impact of your networks. Plan and manage transportation networks carefully to find the right tempo for the movement of people and cargo. Conduct it perfectly, and every citizen, trader, and tourist will march your city toward greatness.